My name is Philip Mendham. I was bred and born at Budby. My brother he joined up when the war started. He volunteered and joined up, and he died in 42. He was killed in 42 in Egypt. I suppose that changed things a bit. And then my other brother, he joined up when he was old enough. And cousin George, he was on a HMS Hood. He got killed and he went down with the Hood lot. I think Albert was 20 when he died. George, he was only a boy. He wasn't 16. He did all his training he was at the Ganges. He went as a boy sailor, and he was with the Ganges. He was with the Ganges, and then when he passed all his exams, he was put on the HMS Hood.
Were they different nationalities?
Yeah. The French Canadians were here at one time. I met two one morning. I went up the back in to feed my rabbits, and there's 2 feet poking out of the pigsty. I couldn't see the body, I could only see the boots, because the first thing I thought was, Germans, these are Germans, dropped out of an aeroplane. I went running down for father like, because he come up the steps and had a look, and now then what are you doing like, and he fetched them all out, and there were 2 soldiers who had lost their way the night before. They'd been out for a drink like, instead of getting to Thoresby they'd got to Budby, and they'd kicked in the pigsty for the night.
So what happened to them?
Well, they went on the way, walked to Thoresby. Which way do I go for Thoresby then? Straight across that field and up side of the lake like, you know. But, the tanks used to come through Budby every morning training on South Forest, and you can imagine what the roads used to be like in the winter. There was 6 inches sludge on the road, and he used to come rumbling through every morning and every night. And one morning my neighbour, she got run over with one. Not actually run over, the track caught her arm, and her arm was never no more good. She ended up in hospital. But the bike, it was all, pushback was all crumbled up all in a big heap.
Can you remember her name?
Mrs. Marsh. Bren carriers. Do you know what a Bren carrier is?
Is it like a vehicle? It's a vehicle.
Small tank on track.
Yes.
On tracks.
Yeah.
It's like a small tank without a top on.
Right.
Well, we had, I don't know, there were 4 or 6 of them coming to the village one day at Budby, and the powers that be decided that he would go in the river with them. So he went into the river, and of course the other, I think there were 4, I think. He went into the river.
Who's the powers that be?
I do believe his name was Lord Lascelles. Is there a Lord Lascelles, do you know?
There's a Lady Lascelles, wasn't there? So that would make sense.
Yeah, Lord Lascelles, he was in charge of this job, and he decided to take his Bren carriers in the river. Well, he got so far up the river, then he got out of his depth a bit, and of course the water got back up the exhaust pipe, because the exhaust pipes were down, and that was him stuck in the middle of the river. So he eventually got all 4 stuck, bogged down, and he come, because we was the only person who's got a phone, you see, so he come to phone his wherever he was stationed. I don't know where he was from actually. I don't know where they were stationed, these here Bren carriers, but it wasn't Thoresby. I was to walk to Thoresby. Lord Lascelles ended up having the night in our kitchen. And he rung up and they'd said, oh, we can't get out to you tonight, sort of thing, you'll have to wait till morning. So next morning they come with 4 more Brangun carriers. They ended up getting 3 parts of them stuck. They ended up with 1. And they were pulling the one managed to get another out, and then the two managed to get the 3rd out, and it was quite exciting that night was.
What were the repercussions of that?
I don't know whether he took over the gold or not, but I can always remember Mother saying, that's Lord Russell's, he's relation to the Queen, the King. So I said, oh. So Mother were quite chuffed because we'd had Lord Russell's stuff in the night, like. And I do believe they sent them some, because the lads, the soldiers, they had to sleep in the Brangun carriers, like, to look after them.
Do you have any memories or anything, knowledge at all of when the bomb was dropped?
Yeah. Yeah, we was outside when the bomb dropped, because, as I say, Father he was an ARP man, and the whole clear had gone, and we was all outside, and then we heard this here drone plane coming like, and the next thing you know, there's the bomb whistling down at Budby. This is blinding flash like, and Dad got us both, me and Mum, his arm around us both and pulled us both down, sheltered the back of a building like, because of course we didn't know how close it was going to be like. And I do believe the crater's still there. I think you can still see the crater top of the hill there.
Was anyone hurt?
No. Dad talks about it in his diary.
Whereabouts would they drop? Where's this crater?
North side of Budby on the Carberton Road. When you go into Carberton, at the top of the hill, just before you get to Duncan Woods Lodge, the first hill, it dropped on there on the right hand side of the road. There must have been some spies about, because they come and drop these bombs, and they're not very far away from the Air Ministry. They're only, quarter of a mile away from the Air Ministry on Company Road. And that's where everything was stored for the RAF, and they got all sorts of things in the huts. And next morning, we always used to, there was a chap used to broadcast from Germany every morning.
Lord Ho-Ho?
Lord Ho-Ho. And of course we always used to listen to Lord Ho-Ho every morning. And it used to set off Germany calling. And it says the Luftwaffe very successfully bombed Budby Aerodrome last night. That's what we heard the next morning. Like, well, he hadn't gone, but he knew there was something to do with, there must have been some spies about. He knew there was something to do with the RAF on Company Road, like, or at Budby.
And Lord Ho-Ho, did he pretend to be English, didn't he? Or?
I do believe he was English, wasn't he?
He was English?
I think so. I think he was
working for the Germans.
A traitor, like, I think.
Yeah.
I think because he spoke perfect English, like.
But you knew better.
We knew better.
I remember the Warwickshire Yeomanry coming into the village. It was quite exciting. The men were all in bell tents, well, a lot of them in bell tents, and they were all from the vicarage, which is called Century House now, is it, or something? Yeah. From the vicarage, as I knew it, right along that drive down to the hall. All these horses were there beside the bell tents with the men, and it was very exciting for the girls and for my brothers. My eldest brother had a new pair of long trousers, his very first pair of long trousers. And he went off for, I don't know, it's a Sunday, I think. It would be a Sunday because Mother wouldn't have let him have them on the other day. And he got them torn on the pegs of one of the bell tents. And she promptly said, "That's it," and cut the other leg off. And
So shorts.
He had shorts. But I do. My sister, being that much older than me, was a little bit more interested in the men, I suppose. But she was.
How old was your sister?
She is
At the time,
8 years older than me.
Oh,
Yes,
right, yeah.
yes. And anyway, we had a groom living at our house. His name was Jim Heasman. And next door at Mrs. Harrison's they had another groom living, and his name was Bob Doris.
So these were grooms with the army?
They were with the officers' horses, which were at Uncle Frank's farm. One Sunday morning, the men used to go out, and there'd be a man on a horse here, and he'd probably have two that side of him and one this side, and they would exercise the horses like that around the park. As they needed to be every day. And on one Sunday morning they were coming down from where the vicarage was, the Century House. They were coming down the road towards the village, and something spooked the horses and there was a stampede, and they tore down the hill over the cattle grid. Some of the horses got in the cattle grid and the others trampled over them, and they went right through the village and out into the park. There was blood all the way up the road, right through, and for days afterwards they were finding loose horses in the park. There were about 70 horses, I understood. I may be wrong, as I was only a child. That stampeded at that time. And later on, I was at Ollerton when a convoy was going out. I was near the Ollerton roundabout, which wasn't there then. I was visiting a friend at one of the cottages, and some soldiers in a wagon. They were not. That was later. It wasn't the riding, the cavalry. They gave me a bunch of letters to post, and I've often wondered since that time how many of those soldiers ever came back. I remember them bombing the lake at Thoresby. The moon was shining, and whether they thought it was an airstrip going from Perthorpe to Budby, but we children all went down looking for shrapnel, of course the boys mainly, but I do remember them bombing Sheffield as well, because they came over, and my father and brother stood outside, and we got the airplanes overhead, dogfighting, with the Germans. We could see the lights of Sheffield from Perthorpe. The sky was absolutely lit up. And of course, at that time, my Uncle Rod was living in Sheffield. He'd come out of the lifeguards and was living in Sheffield then. He was a policeman in Sheffield.
Were you aware of this need for secrecy?
Oh yes, very much so. Yes. Careless talk costs lives, registered with you very much so. And we were taught, even at school, we must be very careful. And my dad, having been in the First World War, he made sure we all were aware